Nara crouched in the dust, the stench of acrid fuel and burned metal assaulting her senses. The wreckage of the Concord interceptor lay smoking, its sleek form a twisted mockery against the crimson sands of Gara 6. Beside her, Torin, the Kelderan pilot and a fellow outcast, swore under his breath. "How many waves does the Concord think they can waste on us?" Torin spat, his iridescent eyes scanning the horizon. He'd traded the rigid conformity of his homeworld for this life on the run, a life always one step ahead of the Concord's relentless pursuit. "As many as it takes to silence us," Nara muttered, brushing ash from her field leathers. "They can't risk what we know getting out." Her hand traced the jagged lines of the glyph etched into her palm. It was a human character, a fragment of an alphabet long declared extinct in the annals of Galactic Concord history. Humans had vanished centuries ago, casualties of some forgotten cosmic disaster, at least according to the official records. But Nara knew better. The glyph's whispers of ancient data streams and the tantalizing clues hidden amidst conquered blacklisted ruins sang a different tune, one of human resilience, of survival. Her defiance had triggered a galactic manhunt. The Concord had never envisioned one of their own xenoarchaeologists questioning the established order. But Nara cared little for order when it was built on lies. A rumble in the distance turned Nara's attention back to the horizon. Dust clouds signalled the approach of more interceptors. She didn't need Torin's grim nod to know they wouldn't win a straight-up fight. There was only one option the Concord hated more than defiance: failure to find what they sought. Nara rose, her gaze fixed on the swirling sandstorm to the east. "To the Badlands," she ordered. "We'll lose them in the storm and head for the rendezvous point." It was a gamble, but her life was a series of wagers against the relentless hand of the Concord. "Time to go all in." Torin cursed with the unbridled spirit of his nomadic ancestors, but didn't argue. They dashed for their battered skimmer, the roar of its engines a defiant counterpoint to the approaching Concord war cries. They skirted the interceptor wreckage, Nara glancing back only once, a pang of guilt twisting in her gut for the Concord soldiers they'd abandoned. They were pawns in a much larger and more sinister game. The crimson wasteland swirled around them, the Badlands an unforgiving labyrinth of shifting dunes and jagged rock spires. The pursuing interceptors roared overhead, briefly swallowed by the swirling sand, until they emerged again, implacable. It was a relentless game of predator and prey, and they were decidedly the latter. "Incoming fire!" Torin shouted over the howling wind, banking the skimmer hard to avoid a blast of plasma fire that scorched the sand just beneath them. They plunged recklessly into the heart of the storm, the stinging grit limiting visibility to mere meters. Nara clung to the vibrating frame of the skimmer, a fierce determination burning through her alongside a creeping fear. She was a scholar, not a soldier, yet the whispers of the past had thrust her into this desperate flight. Ahead, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a humanoid figure outlined against the storm's chaos. Her heart pounded in her chest. Humans were myth, legend, not figures that materialized from sandstorms. "Hold course," she yelled to Torin. Nara didn't know if this figure meant salvation or another threat, but after a lifetime of shadows, she wouldn't flee from the unknown. The figure grew clearer, a woman clad in worn leathers, face masked against the tempest. In a flicker of motion that defied Nara's understanding of combat, the woman leapt onto the skimmer, dislodging Nara with shocking force. Torin swiveled, panic in his three-coloured eyes. "Nara!" Nara hit the sand hard, tumbling, disoriented. As she scrambled back to her feet, her eyes fixed on the woman who held Torin at blaster point. The storm-dulled world seemed to shift. This wasn't a woman. Her features were too angular, her eyes too sharp. "Human," Nara breathed, the word thick with shock and awe. "Close enough," the human barked, her voice rough with disuse. Nara noted the strange accent archaic, tinged with the echoes of long-forgotten dialects. "Now, who in the blazes are you?" For a moment the whirlwind of events left Nara speechless. Before her stood a living, breathing embodiment of the history she'd dedicated her life to finding. All scholarly treatises, every fragmented data whisper, vanished against the reality of this human's defiant glare. "Naratal," she stammered out, regaining some composure. She raised her hands in a gesture of non-confrontation. "Xenoarchaeologist." The word seemed absurd now, inadequate for the gravity of the moment. The human scoffed. "Fancy title for a scavenger. What do you want, Concord rat?" She gestured roughly around them. "There's nothing of value here." "Except you." Nara retorted, emboldened by the impossible truth. Her eyes searched the human's stance, assessing. Despite the archaic language and weathered look, a startling energy thrummed beneath her skin. This was no broken scavenger, but a fighter. "I'm with the Resistance," Nara added, watching the human's eyes narrow in calculating interest. "And I believe you are too. Resistance?" The human lowered the blaster but remained coiled, ready to spring. "What are you resisting, the damned sand?" Torin appeared beside Nara, eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and apprehension. Nara gestured him back. This was her game to play. "The Galactic Concord," Nara answered, voice quiet but unwavering. "I know of your existence, what the Concord would deem impossible, and they fear your discovery." She reached inside her satchel, ignoring Torin's gasp as she pulled out a fragment of etched obsidian. The human's eyes flickered in recognition. The human lunged. The blaster flew from her hand, forgotten. Before Nara could react, the human gripped the shard, tracing the faint lines of glyphs with shaking fingers. "These," she began, the unfamiliar syntax of human dialect making it difficult to decipher her words. "Where?" In a flash they were engulfed by darkness. One moment the Badlands raged around them, the next a cold void suffocated all light. Panic tightened Nara's throat, but it was short-lived. A soft humming sound grew, followed by an eerie blue glow emanating from the lines of the obsidian shard. Suddenly, the glow became blinding. Nara pressed her hands over her eyes, an agonized cry caught in her throat. The brilliance vanished as quickly as it arrived. Nara blinked away spots of light, her vision returning slowly. It wasn't the harsh glare of the Badlands, but the filtered light of a forest? Verdant green branches arced overhead, sunlight dappling through the thick canopy. Her ears thrummed with an unfamiliar chorus of birdsong, a symphony alien to her world of endless desert. Torin crouched beside her, eyes wild. "Where?" he began, then fell silent, his keen Kelderan senses registering a multitude of new scents, textures, and life. "Impossible," Nara whispered, stumbling to her feet. This wasn't just a change of location. It was a violation of all known physics. The shock numbed her mind, unable to piece together the whirlwind of events. The human recovered first, snatching the obsidian shard from the ground and stuffing it into a pocket. "Took you long enough," she grumbled, glaring at Nara. "Now answers. Who are you, and what game is this?" "I already told you," Nara began, her voice stronger now. Purpose bloomed even within the chaos. She'd discovered the truth. Humans had not only survived, but they possessed staggering technology. Now was not the time for fear. "My name is Nara Tal, former xenoarchaeologist of the Concord, but I left—" A wave of guilt crashed over her at the memory of the wrecked interceptor. She swallowed, her gaze steady on the human. "I left because I learned humanity's story isn't over. Your proof. Tell me your name. And where we are. Tell me." Nara's breath hitched, the weight of the question immense. "How?" The human surveyed her with grudging respect. "Fine," she finally muttered. "The name's Anya. As for where, we call it Earth. And as for the how, that's a damn long story, Concord rat, and one you're not ready to hear." A surge of adrenaline coursed through Nara. Earth, the mythical cradle of mankind rediscovered after centuries. She struggled to contain her excitement, her scholar's mind reeling. This wasn't just defying history, it was rewriting the entire future of the galaxy. The sudden crack of laser fire cut through the air, shocking them all into action. Nara whirled, the forest's tranquil facade shattered by the whine of Concord engines. 3 sleek interceptors materialized from the dense foliage, their gun turrets swiveling to lock on them. Anya bellowed a string of curses Nara's translator failed to decipher, pushing them both towards a tangle of thick-rooted trees. "Move!" Torin, finally snapping out of his awestruck daze, instinctively followed Anya's lead as bolts of plasma ripped through the air where they'd stood moments before. The tranquility of Earth was a facade, replaced with the familiar bite of battle. Nara's mind struggled to reconcile the two realities, verdant paradise and relentless war zone. "How did they find us?" Nara gasped out, scrambling to keep up with Anya's lithe movements. The human darted through the underbrush with the uncanny grace of one born to this world, a stark contrast to Nara's desert-honed agility. "Doesn't matter," Anya shot back. "They want you and whatever intel you brought." She paused, reaching into a worn pack slung across her shoulder. Hold this. Nara fumbled with the device Anya thrust into her hands, a strange metallic cube pulsing with an internal rhythm. Before she could question its purpose, the human was gone, blending into the shadows. A blast shook the ground nearby. Nara ducked behind a moss-covered boulder, the cube gripped tightly in her palm. The pulse within it grew stronger, responding to the approaching force. This wasn't just technology. It felt reactive, alive. From the corner of her eye, Nara caught a glimpse of the pursuers. Concord troops in their obsidian armour flooded the forest clearing, fanning out with grim determination. Their movements were precise, mirroring her own countless simulations of attack scenarios. She recognized the officer leading them, Captain Sarin, a cold-eyed strategist who believed her defiance had been thoroughly neutralized. How wrong he was. A glint of movement caught her eye. Anya materialized atop a fallen log, the archaic blaster rifle she wielded incongruous against the advanced tech of the Concord. Her first shot was a blinding flash, momentarily frying the optics of the closest trooper. Chaos erupted. Seizing the moment, Nara bolted from her cover, pressing the cube deeper into her pocket. Its thrumming pulse resonated with a growing network of unseen signals, a hidden heartbeat beneath the Earth's surface. Suddenly, the ground beneath the Concord troops shifted violently, plunging them into a series of newly opened sinkholes. Screams of surprise mixed with the sounds of cracking armour and snapping bones. The forest around them seemed to come alive in defiance of the intruders. Towering trees tipped over, their massive roots surging from the soil to ensnare unsuspecting soldiers. Thick vines sprouted from nowhere, binding limbs and pinning troops to the ground. The Concord, accustomed to dominating sterile environments with their technology, struggled against the raw, unpredictable power of nature itself. Anya's laughter echoed through the chaos, wild and triumphant. Earth was more than a refuge, it was a weapon. Nara, her own thrill of vengeance mixed with awe at the planet's defences, darted across the battlefield. The cube pulsed against her leg, guiding her towards a tangle of exposed machinery near the heart of the disruption. This must be the communications hub the Concord had used to track them. She reached the tangle of wires and consoles, a desperate plan forming in her head. If she could disable their signal... Her work was interrupted by the chilling pressure of a blaster barrel at the back of her skull. "I always knew you wouldn't go quietly, Dr. Tell." Captain Sarin's voice was a hiss of cold satisfaction. Nara raised her hands, her mind churning. She'd outsmarted him, outrun him, but a single miscalculation had brought her back into his grasp. "You found the humans," Sarin continued, his grip tightening on the weapon. "But that knowledge will die here along with the last of their kind." "And miss out on all their secrets?" A new voice joined the deadly tableau, startling them both. Anya stood at the edge of the clearing, her rifle trained on Sarin. "You Concord dogs are always so predictable. Think you own everything." "You are outmatched," Sarin calculated, never wavering from his target, Nara. "Your forest tricks won't hold us forever." As if in response, a low rumble echoed through the ground, growing into a deafening roar. Nara risked a glance over her shoulder and gasped. A fissure had split the earth, a gaping chasm widening impossibly fast, directly between her and Anya. Sarin swore, confusion twisting his usual stoic mask. "What have you done?" Anya grinned, an untamed glint in her eyes. "Just showing off the welcome mat," she replied. The chasm widened further. A blinding beam of light shot upward from its depths, followed by a shape so massive it blotted out the sky. Nara's mind froze in shock. An immense metallic structure was rising from the forest floor, its sleek surface reflecting the panicked faces of the Concord. It was a ship, not the sleek swift craft of the Concord, but something far more primal. Its colossal form defied conventional design, a patchwork of gleaming metal and exposed conduits, as though built with urgency and defiant necessity. From its open bays swooped a flurry of smaller aircraft, buzzing towards the Concord forces with menacing speed. "Impossible," Sarin breathed, his composure breaking under the weight of this revelation. The Concord believed humanity incapable of such engineering, certainly not in secret. Yet here it was, a defiant response to centuries of oppression. These were not broken remnants, but a technologically advanced society. Had generations of humans waged this silent war, honing their skills and their secrets, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? "The reclamation begins today," Anya declared, her voice ringing with a power Nara suddenly understood. She was not just a defiant survivor, but a leader in this hidden war. In the face of this overwhelming force, Saren's troops fell into disarray. Nara capitalized on the chaos. She wrenched an arm free, twisting away from his grasp and shoving the communications hub towards the yawning chasm. It tumbled over the edge with a satisfying splash of mud. Saren lunged for her, eyes flashing with rage. Nara stumbled backward, one foot finding only empty air as she tripped over the edge of the fissure. She let out a strangled cry, bracing for the fall into the depths, only to be yanked back by the collar of her tunic. Anya had her in an iron grip, her expression a mask of fierce concentration. "That's how Earth welcomes outsiders, Concord," Anya snarled, hauling Nara back to solid ground. Saren stared down at them, defeat etched on his face. The battle was lost. His forces were in retreat, desperately pursued by the buzzing human fighters. Nara stared at Anya, her heart pounding. "That ship? How?" The words barely formed, her mind reeling from everything she'd witnessed. Anya's smile was a slash of white against her dirt-smudged face. "A little souvenir we put together from bits of Concord technology over the centuries," she answered with a wink. "Come on, scholar, you're about to see how we really survived." With a final glance at the receding Concord forces, Anya turned and led Nara deeper into the Earth's embrace. Today was not just the day of Nara's discovery. It was the day the Galactic Concord's perception of humanity shattered forever. They descended further into the Earth. No natural cave system could explain the labyrinth of metallic tunnels and chambers that opened before them. Each space hummed with activity. Technicians in worn jumpsuits monitored vast control panels, while uniformed personnel, their faces etched with determination, relayed commands across crackling comlinks. Despite the clear evidence of makeshift repairs and repurposed technology, an underlying order governed the controlled chaos. Nara's mind buzzed with questions. How long had this existed? How vast was their network beneath the surface? Were there other hidden enclaves across the planet? But she sensed that Anya moved with a warrior's urgency. "The Concord will be back," Anya warned, her voice grim. "They won't take this defeat lightly." They entered a vast chamber filled with shimmering holographic projections. Constellations flickered, pinpointing locations across not only Earth, but also distant star systems. Nara recognized some from Concord star charts, but many were utterly alien. Her gaze fixed on a large, pulsating red mark near the galactic center. "The Solari Convergence," Anya said, answering Nara's unspoken question. "A cosmic event that happens not often." Her archaic dialect struggled with the astronomical term. "Cataclysmic, universe-shaking stuff. That's why the Concord tried so damn hard to wipe us out. We were in their way." Nara struggled to grasp this new, terrifying reality. Humans weren't just a historical footnote, nor even an insurgent threat to the Concord. They were bound to a galactic event, a pivotal player in a war waged by powers far beyond her comprehension. "Why?" was the only question her shocked mind could form. "Information," Anya replied. "Ancient data we had. Maps, warnings, blueprints, stuff even the Concord couldn't fully translate. We knew something big was coming, had time to prepare. They wanted that knowledge to use it for themselves." The enormity of it all threatened to overwhelm Nara. "We have to tell the Concord. Warn them," she insisted, clinging to an old sense of galactic order. Anya shook her head, a look of bitter sadness flickering in her eyes. "No one listened centuries ago when we first warned them. The Concord decided it was easier to delete us than heed the message. No, we fight our own war." She led Nara deeper still, finally stopping before an unassuming door. "It's time you met someone who will explain more, someone with a longer view of things." Anya's tone was almost reverential. A shiver of anticipation ran down Nara's spine. The door slid open not into another bustling chamber, but into a small, dimly lit room. The air hummed with a low thrumming energy, a sensation that seemed to resonate with the very core of her being. At the centre of the room sat an ancient figure, so still that Nara initially mistook them for a statue. Their skin was shriveled and their hair long and silver, yet there was an unsettling vibrancy in their closed eyes. Intricate tattoos snaked from beneath their threadbare clothing, glowing faintly with a pulsing internal light. As they drew closer, Nara realized with a jolt that the tattoos covered every inch of the figure's exposed skin. Anya knelt beside the figure and touched their hand. "Elder Kai," she murmured, "our guest has arrived." A flicker of movement, Then Kai's eyelids fluttered open. Their eyes, a shocking luminous turquoise, as if reflecting a different reality. They looked directly at Nara, and a shock like a cold jolt ran through her. It wasn't just the intensity of their gaze, nor their unusual appearance, but an unsettling sense of vastness behind their eyes. "Nara Tal," Kai spoke, their voice rasping, each word laden with a haunting weight. "Child of the Concord, yet not of them. You seek what has always been, yet never truly seen." Nara fought a wave of dizzying confusion. "How? Who?" "Questions born of your time, your learning," Kai answered cryptically. They reached out a withered hand towards Nara, their glowing tattoos illuminating the dimness. "Look closer, child of dust and starlight." Hesitantly, Nara stepped forward, drawn by a force she couldn't explain. Kai's hand hovered near her own, an invitation to a connection she both dreaded and craved. "We are bound by strands of the possible," Kai whispered, "threads woven long before your people took their first breaths in this corner of existence." Nara's gaze followed the labyrinth of glowing tattoos, their intricate patterns seeming to shift and dance before her eyes. A dizzying sensation washed over her. Suddenly she wasn't just looking at the markings, but through them into something else. There were flickers of worlds, battles, moments in time, both familiar yet utterly strange. A vast tapestry of history and futures, all pulsing to the same cosmic rhythm she felt beneath the surface of Earth. A gasping cry tore from her throat as she recoiled. Her head swam and the room tilted alarmingly. It was too much, too fast. A torrent of possible realities threatening to overwhelm her. Strong arms steadied her as Nara collapsed, the dizzying visions fading into swirling darkness. Anya's voice cut through the roaring confusion in her head. "Elder, you overwhelmed her." "She has the capacity," Kai's voice was faint, tinged with strain. "More than any Concord scholar I've seen, perhaps more than any human in generations." "But what good is it if she's shattered?" Anya countered, a new edge of worry in her voice. Nara fought her way back to awareness, her mind buzzing with the lingering echoes of those strange visions. Were they the future? Possible pasts? Alternate timelines twisting around her like a hungry serpent. It was maddening and exhilarating all at once. "Time for her to rest." Kai's voice drifted across her hazy consciousness. "Then, we explain. Then, she chooses." Choose? Choose what? Nara had lost control the moment she'd met Anya, one impossible revelation leading her into another like a cascading fall she couldn't stop. Yet underneath the panic was an undeniable curiosity, the same hunger for truth that had sent her fleeing the clutches of the Concord. She was helped to a simple cot. Anya pressed a cup of a bitter-smelling liquid into her hands. Nara drank, grateful for the grounding effect of the earthy brew. Sleep pulled at her, promising a respite from the swirling chaos of her mind. As she drifted off, Kai's words haunted her. She chooses. It was less a prophecy, more a challenge. Nara, the scholar who defied the established order, was now faced with a choice that would redefine not just her destiny, but possibly the very fabric of the known galaxy.